And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just put them in the chat, and I will do my best to give you an objective and sincere and accurate answer. I know that politics can be really weird to try to follow these days because there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda, and everybody seems to have a completely different idea of what is actually going on. So, this show is here for you to get all of your questions answered about what's going on, what the hell these words mean, like filibuster and reconciliation and continuing resolution, what the various three-letter agencies and the government do, why it's important to vote, who are the good politicians, who are the bad politicians. There's a lot of information to parse through. And so this is what this show is for. JP, good to see you again. Says, how much does it cost to hire a jet uh, to drop poop on protesters? Oh, God, that's got to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not low millions of dollars, But doing it with AI, that's basically free. Dan Blackwood says, so the Democrats aren't holding the government hostage in exchange for 500 abortion procedures? No, Dan, no. Yeah, I know that is a common misconception that people have, unfortunately. It's Rocketeer says, follow-up question, are they expected to load the chamber with their own poop? Ah, God, yeah, where do they get the poop from? I mean, realistically, they're probably taking it from everybody in the concentration camps that they're building. That is part of what they're doing there. There are forced labor camps and also poop collection facilities. All right, we're off to a silly start, everybody. So welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. We are here to answer all of your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated they may be. Everyone is welcome here, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat or something else. If you're further to the left than me or further to the right than me, this is not a place for getting judged. You don't have to worry about getting yelled at or being called a name. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Oh, it's the Rocketeer. That's very clever. Average Joe, good to see you again. Gabel Lolel says, do you believe in the gender pay gap? Yeah, I think it's pretty well documented. I know that there are some people who try to argue the statistical accuracy of those studies, but I don't know. It seems pretty cut and dry to me that women are undervalued in the workplace. Dan Blackburn says, don't put a question mark where the limits of your imagination, put a period for your safety. Question mark where the limits of the imagination, put a period for your safety. Dan, you never miss. And I just don't get that one, though. That one's over my head. I know it's great. I just, that's my own idiocy right there. Okay, Ace says, it looks like there is something happening at Camp David because I saw some truck headed that way. I mean, I haven't seen any stories about it, Ace, but I'll keep my eye on it. If women, Gay Bellowell says, if women were undervalued, wouldn't a good businessman hire all women to cut costs? Yes, that is an argument that I have heard, but there are other reasons why men specifically hire other men. There's sort of like a boys' club vibe to things. Like we want to be able to, take off our pants and fart and make raunchy jokes. They also believe that men project more strength in negotiations, and so you are talking about, I don't know, saving $500,000 a year, but potentially losing out on millions if your negotiations are not big ball, testosterone driven, fucking hard nosed negotiations and shit like that. Um, Gable says, do you think the pay gap statistics account for maternal leave and pregnancy leave? I mean, it's clear that you do, Gabe LOL. So listen, Gabe, I'm not going to argue with you whether or not the pay gap is real or it is not. I think that there is plenty of evidence collected over decades that women have been discriminated against in the workplace in one form or another, whether it is being paid less than their male counterparts or being passed over for promotions. I don't think you want to believe that that is true. I think that you have either fallen down into that misinformation rabbit hole that says that the pay gap is not a real thing, or you are specifically pushing that misinformation. So I guess let's just talk about something else, because I'm not going to move you and you're not going to move me on this. Okay. JP says, I've seen a source say the ceasefire never actually happened, as there was still violence. Thoughts? So, JP, it is 100% accurate that the fighting continues in Gaza and the West Bank. All of the objections that Syria's people have made towards the Trump administration's, you know, loosey goosey peace deal between Israel and Palestine have all come to fruition. And all of those gaps in what are we going to do about X, Y, and Z mean that now there's continued fighting and Israel is threatening to start up official, trying to basically cut everything off now that they've got a bunch of live hostages back. Okay. Caden Neal says, I'm going to DC for a week on November 17th. You think everything will be open by then? I mean, I wouldn't put money on it. Things are still pretty. It really seems like the Republican Party is still being pretty intransigent about opening up the government. In fact, they just tried to pass a bill in the Senate to pay only the agencies that they want to pay going forward. And then the Democrats in the Senate put before the bill basically saying, like, why don't we pay all of the essential workers? And then right now the Republicans are lying about what their bill says and what the Democratic bill says. So, like, the fight doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. Jack says, thoughts on illegal truck driver who took several lives while driving under the influence. So yeah, I don't know. Are you saying that he was an undocumented immigrant, Jack, the guy who was driving under the influence? Let me know about that. Air Her Tunes says, why do we let politicians trade stocks? Because we keep on voting for politicians who will not change the law to make it so that they can't trade stocks. But let's take a look right now. A Hertunes. A Hertunes, are you still here? Let me know if you are. Because right now, the government is controlled entirely by the Republican Party. You have got the Republican Party has the executive, they have Congress, and they have the judiciary. So if they were going to make it illegal for people in government to trade stocks, then they would be able to do that. And in fact, they already have at least one senator, Josh Hawley, who is co-sponsoring a bill with a bunch of Democrats to make that the case. And they even wrote in the bill that Trump doesn't have to abide by it, that he can continue grifting and trading stocks just to make sure that he will sign it. And every Republican besides Josh Hawley is trying to block that bill. Rick Scott went out there and said senators need to be able to trade stocks, otherwise we'd be poor. So if you don't want people in government to trade stocks, then you got to vote for Democrats, because that's the only party that is seriously attempting to do that. You got one Republican senator who's on board. I guarantee you, if Democrats control Congress right now, we would be having a vote on this bill. Okay, so as far as like the undocumented fella who was driving under the influence, I don't view crimes by undocumented people as being worse than crimes by documented people just because they're undocumented. So what that person did was absolutely terrible, but that is not indicative of what every undocumented person does when they're in this country. It was horrific, and I think that the punishment should be the same if a documented person did it or a white person did it. There tends to be this focus on crimes committed by undocumented immigrants because they are other, because they are different from us. And then they tend to get like a lot of hype, and it really helps people that want to, ethnically cleanse America of every brown person as evidence. They're like, look at what they come here and do. They drive under the influence. They kill a bunch of people in trucks. We got to get rid of all these brown people. But if you look at the data, like the net data, it shows that immigrants, whether documented or not, commit crimes at lower rates than naturalized citizens. It just, it is an outlier. It's a fucking travesty. I hope that person is held legally accountable for what they did. Manslaughter charges probably, because I think some people died, Okay, Joe's 31C says 13 clean CRs were passed under Biden. Why not pass one now? The reason why, Joe, is because the Republican Party is barreling towards increasing everybody's health insurance costs by 5x, 10x, something like that. And the Democratic Party is saying that they will not allow that. And so they're saying we would rather shut down the government and call America's attention to this fact that the Republican Party is about to skyrocket everybody's costs of living, and not just, allow this to happen like it's business as usual. And the Republican Party is saying, well, we would really like to increase everybody's health insurance costs. And if you won't let us do that, then we are fine keeping the government shut down because we don't really give a shit about American suffering, as is evidenced by the fact that we literally passed a bill to make everybody's health insurance costs go up. And the Republican Party could end the shutdown whenever they wanted, if they wanted to get rid of the filibuster. They have the numbers to get rid of the filibuster. So why aren't they opening the government up? I think it's because they like the government being shut down. I think they like it. I think that they like not being able to hold votes on certain files being released to the public concerning a guy with an island. I think they like having an excuse not to seat a representative from Arizona just because she's a Democrat. I think that they like making Americans suffer because then they are more desperate and they don't have time and energy to go out and vote and protest and strike and stuff like that. And when people are desperate, when people are suffering, sometimes they turn to crime. And then when more crime happens, then the Republican Party gets to justify having more of a police state and sending ICE into more places and the National Guard. Alrighty, what's up, Lauren? Good to see you again. Emily the City says, isn't it also because they don't want Gri Valia to release the fellow with the island files? 100%, absolutely. Mike Erratic says, they like letting the national parks go unmanaged. That is also accurate. Okay, over on Twitch, we have people in government who were alive and employed when it was acceptable to call a woman sugar tits and say we don't promote women. It's living culture. That is accurate, JP. JP says, what are Dems doing to keep the government shut down? Is there some vote or something? Yeah, I mean, they are telling the Republicans that they will only vote for the continuing resolution, which is the piece of legislation that allows funding to go forward for the government if the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act are included in it. Because right now, thanks to the big, beautiful bill, healthcare costs, as well as every other kind of cost because of tariffs, are going to be going up. But if we do not extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies, then that is going to be a lot larger, basically. Average Joe, I'll get to that question in just a second. Let me get back into these TikTok questions. LG says Republicans should have negotiated with Dems since they need Democratic votes. That is accurate. User a bunch of numbers says, will we be stuck with Democrats and Republicans 30 years in the future? So the only way that we can challenge the, ascendancy of those two parties is if we have ranked choice voting. Because without ranked choice voting, any other party will only serve to be a spoiler candidate for the main two parties. Now, the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal in all 50 states. So the way to get to a not just those two-party system is to use the two-party system to elect the one party that will make ranked choice voting a thing, and then we can have potentially other parties included in our elections. Oh, excuse me. Kimberlina says, what can we do to promote Democratic candidates in red states, like Hallie Schaffner in Arkansas? So there is, questionable efficacy to flying into those red states and trying to convince people that live there to vote for somebody, where it's like, what are you, some blue state liberal coming here and telling me what I got to do kind of a thing? I still think it's a valuable thing to do just so that, you are giving organizers in that state more people power to figure out which houses are convincible and which ones aren't. But failing that, you could be phone banking for those candidates. You could be text banking for those candidates. Those candidates need money and volunteers. And so I would reach out to them and see if there's anything that they would like you to do, Ooh, Trav, I don't know what Agartha is. Shork says, what do you think of the main Democrat with the Yahtzee tattoo? So I heard Graham Plattner give an interview explaining the tattoo, and it makes perfect sense to me. I think that we all need to recognize where the purity testing of the Democratic Party is counterproductive. I think that we need to allow for people to be flawed. The current head of the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has what is a way less ambiguous, I think, pro-Schnazi or white supremacist tattoo that the Republican Party does not give a shit about. And while I do not believe that, Graham Plattner has those beliefs, I do believe that Pete Hegseth does. And so I think that we should judge Pete Hegseth way harder for having that tattoo and not expressing any kind of regret over it than, Graham Plattner, who, got a tattoo when he was a Marine, just like in the fucking shit, dealing with PTSD, not really knowing what he was getting, doing a lot of drinking with his buddies over there, and then not holding those beliefs, Kimberlina says, like that he didn't I don't know what the first part of that thing was. Okay, Bone My Cat 420 says, stop fighting over right versus left, they're both corrupt. So Bone My Cat, that is inaccurate. While there are people in the Democratic Party who are bad, there's a big difference between both the politicians and the parties and the platforms and their history of governance, where we can see that the Republican Party is way more corrupt than the Democratic Party. And so we should always be voting for better over worse. But I agree with you. Like the idea of fighting other voters is unproductive. What we need to be doing is, forming coalitions with other voters and using those coalitions to attack the billionaire class. Not literally, of course. I don't condone violence, but just doing what we can to undo the rampant income inequality that we're all suffering through right now. And to recognize that of both political parties, the one that is more in the pocket of the billionaire class is the Republican Party by like a fucking mile, Anarcho Hound says Democrats shifted trillions to war investors out of the tax base. That does not seem accurate. Anarcho, have you always been saying things that are inaccurate? It looks like you have. So guess what? You are out of here. Let's see here. Triska, good to see you again. Do you think the stock market will bottom out due to tariffs / dropping dollar value plus shit economics? So, yes, Triska, with a caveat. Like, nobody has the ability to predict exactly when this stuff is going to happen. But we are looking down the barrel of a ton of blaring red warning lights with the AI bubble, with tariffs, with declining dollar, with people abandoning the American bond market, with unemployment on the rise, with inflation on the rise. Like, things just don't look good. There is a counter argument, though, because the market has some elements of manipulation to it, where, if you are Goldman Sachs and you see that all of your positions are about to lose, $20 billion, then you have the ability to sort of like artificially, adjust your numbers until you can sell all your positions and then sort of like recognize the actual value of that stuff. Like if you ever saw the movie The Big Short, like that's exactly what happened there. And so, it's possible that the sort of like house of cards that the economy is built up on and that the stock market is built up on has just been reinforced by a bunch of, sort of like backroom shenanigans that you and I don't know about. And so whether that crash happens now or in 5 years or what, like, is anybody's guess. Additionally, because of the size of the American market and because of how many resources we have available to us, there seems to be some built-in resiliency there. And so, I don't know. Like, I am not personally going to start putting my chips on the table while all of this shit is going on. But I am not qualified to make financial advice for anybody else. I would just say things look bad. Every economist says that things are looking bad. But nobody knows what's going to happen. Remember Matthew McConaughey in The Wolf of Wall Street. No one knows if a stock's going to go up, down, left, right. It's a fizzy, it's a fuzzy, it's fairy dust, Okay, Average Joe says, have you been paying attention to the Graham Plattner story? A Maine newspaper reported that his opposition contracted a Palantir-backed company to dig up dirt. His Democratic opponent, backed by Schumer and Jeffries, hired a company using Palantir technology to hurt his campaign. As a veteran, I can attest to the ignorance around lesser known tattoos. Yeah, like I said, I like Graham Plattner a lot. He seems like a cool guy. I think we need to start leaning towards hyping up, lifting up people in the Democratic Party who are normal and also not crazy old. Because what people don't like about the Democratic Party is that it feels old and it feels establishment, and they want change. They want something different. And when a cool guy, a fucking oyster farmer with progressive beliefs comes on the scene, I think that we need to have grace and recognize that this is a person who's made mistakes in their lives. If you always purity test your politicians to the point where they have had zero scandals or mistakes in their entire life, then you end up with people that sound like robots and sound like politicians and sound really inauthentic because, if somebody's never made any mistakes, then they probably decided when they were like 8 that they wanted to be in politics, and those people are a little weird. Okay, Arrow Abraham says, so a young racist over an old racist. I mean, I am extremely skeptical that Graham Plattner is a racist. I'm extremely skeptical that whoever the older nominee that's being pushed in Maine is also a racist. It seems a little hyperbolic to suggest that all of those people are racists. Hey, I achieved my goal. Thank you so much, everybody who contributed. I really appreciate that. Let me see if I can. Okay, place that there. Set up a new goal. Alright. Okay. Viewers can send it to your favorite. All right. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with how these live goals work, so I hope you guys will bear with me as I try to figure this stuff out here. Okay. Claire says, how can he get away with tearing down the East Wing? He doesn't own the White House. I mean, the answer is that the only people who could hold him accountable are the Republican Party, and so, yeah. Yeah, it's just it is just the Republican Party not willing to stand up against the Trump administration literally destroying the White House, Arrow Abraham says, you say that, but when people state your last name without context, you call them anti-Semitic. Got it. Yeah, Arrow, there's a big difference. There's a huge difference between those two things, If somebody comes on to, holy shit, East means West, you're being way too sweet. Thank you so much for all the gifts. Arrow Abraham, if Graham Plattner was going on live streams and just saying and just calling out my last name, then I'd be like, that seems like an anti-Semitic dog whistle. But his explanation for all of the what do you call it? All of the mistakes that he has made in the past, they track for me. Are we not allowed somebody to grow and change? D. Simmons just wrote Berenstein in quotation marks LMAO. Seems kind of anti-Semitic to me. Yeah, Eru. I know you're a regular and everything, so I'm not trying to what do you call it? I'm not trying to get into it with you here, but yeah, I don't know. Like, let's try to find some common ground here. Let's try to figure out where our miscommunications are. Matthew Davis 81 says, how do you feel about our current president being a felon? If he was a felon who went to jail, served his time, and then came out, then I would be like, yeah, no big deal. Former felons can be president. But the fact that he has not served a single day of his sentence, the fact that he has not paid a cent of restitution, he is a felon, an indicted felon who has not made amends at all. And I think that's disgusting. Let's see here. Arrow Abraham says, we agree on a lot, but I think we're not aligned here, which is fine. Yeah, is there something about what Graham Plattner did that makes you think that he is currently a racist? Is it something about people within the Democratic Party that you think communicates that they are racist? Arrow Abraham, let me know about that. I mean, you know how I feel being a regular on this live stream about painting every politician with the same brush, the same general brush, All right, Fika Sika, Tyro, good to see you guys. I will be right there. Okie dokie. Tarek says, "What's your take on Palestine? What Israel is doing to the people of Palestine and has been doing for decades is barbaric, and we should not be sending them money and weapons because of that." Lauren says, "Why don't Dems use bots to counteract all the MAGA misinformation bots?" I don't know. I don't know if they are or if they aren't. The problem is that that stuff costs money. And if we are just in a war of who can spend the most money on bots to push their agenda, the Republican Party is going to take it by a fucking mile, because the richest people in the world are backing them financially. They have unlimited resources. Like, just Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump by themselves, I think, could probably outspend the entire Democratic Party in an escalating bot war. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it also seems like really inorganic, and I think that Democratic voters are kind of hostile to things that feel inorganic. Like, I think it turns them off of the party. Alrighty. Tyrek says, "Thank God. It sounds bad, but your last name scared me. Had a feeling you weren't a Zio, though." Just real quick, Tarek. I don't love the word Zionist because I feel like nobody can agree on what it means. Like, some people think that Zionism means that Israel has the right to annex all their surrounding countries, and some people think that Zionism just means that those people that are currently living in Israel should be able to stay there and live their fucking lives. Alrighty. Eru says his ignorance on his tattoo, comment on black people tipping, comment on sexual assault for women in military. Have you heard his explanations for those things, Eru? Do you not buy that he said those things in ignorance and that he has since learned from that? Do we give him any grace for having grown in the last 15 years or so, Eru? Because that stuff makes perfect sense to me as somebody who knows people who are in the military and know the culture of the military. It seems very easy to me that somebody could come out of there with PTSD, being that being their home, that culture being their home. And then once they leave there and once their life starts getting better, they start to sort of like, readjust their prior assumptions. Okay, let's get back over to these Twitch comments here. Okay, Fikasika says, "Why the Dems saying Trump is using taxpayer money for the White House renovations when it's not true, and even NBC reported it's from donations and private funds? It destroys Democrats' reputations." So, Fikasika, I have not seen the reporting that Democrats are saying that Trump is using taxpayer money for the White House renovations. I don't know how accurate it is to say that that is a message coming out from the Democratic Party. I know that right now reporting is saying that the ballroom, the stupid fucking ballroom that is destroying a historical part of our, nation's history, is being funded by donations, but I also think that there's a lot of room in there for corruption and bribery. Like, why are these billionaires giving this money to Trump to buy a golden ballroom? Which contractors are getting used? Are they Trump's buddies? Like, are these contracts being fairly priced? Is this a grift? Is there stuff going on behind the scenes where we don't know if they are using taxpayer dollars to pay for the ballroom or anything like that? So yeah, if there are Democrats who are making that assertion, I would want to see some proof that what they're saying is accurate. It seems right now the reporting is saying that it is not coming from taxpayer dollars. But yeah, if they're saying that, they probably misspoke. Maybe they're being hyperbolic. Yeah, I mean, I don't advocate for anybody to be inaccurate in their speech because it makes Democratic Party look bad. I completely agree with that. Okay. Tyro Pillar says, "How did we get reps before the 17th Amendment?" Tyro, that question's a little over my head, so I gotta I got to punt on that one so far. So sorry, but I'll give it a Google later if you remind me. Average Joe says, "Is it fair to say that if we disavowed every person based on the worst period of their life, we wouldn't have many allies?" That is true, Average Joe PG. Yeah, I think Eru, and I wanted to ask you this as well, Eru. Like, do you feel like we are being too dogmatic in purity testing our politicians? Like, do you think that's us automatically saying that a person who's made mistakes in their past is completely void from being a torchbearer for the Democratic Party? Like, do you think that that's an issue? The way that you think that Graham Plattner's tattoos or his Reddit posts were an issue. Alrighty. Neo Fortune says, "Are bots legal in the US for that? In most of Europe, it's fraud and illegal." So there are some gray areas as far as like what American politicians are allowed to pay for with their campaign finance contributions, what super PACs are able to pay for in their campaign finance contributions, accepting in-kind donations from other nations. So, for example, Russia is probably spending a lot of that bot money for the Republican Party. Um, so yeah, it's a little legally dubious. I'm sure that there are, weird loopholes that people are, like exploiting. But a lot of this just comes down to the Republican Party not giving a shit and, recognizing that they have such a firm control over both the information environment and the judiciary that, even if there is legal accountability, it's probably going to be delayed for decades, or maybe there's some loophole that they can use to escape accountability. Alrighty. Okay, getting back into these TikTok comments. Aero Abraham says, "Heard apology. Everyone is sorry when caught. Maybe it's sincere, maybe not. I don't know. But not fit for Congress." Okay, I can respect that that's how you feel. Aero Abraham says, "Not a purity test. Y'all can't move the goalpost. If it was Republican, this would be amplified." Eru, I do believe that that is accurate, but I also think there's a difference between somebody who is running for a seat in the Democratic Party versus somebody that is running for a seat in the Republican Party. Like, the reason why I think we should be hyper vigilant about, Schnazi or white supremacist tattoos on Pete Hegseth is because the Republican Party is aligned with white supremacist groups and neo-Schnazi groups and the KKK, for example, It's not that every Republican voter is a racist, but if you are a racist, then you're going to be voting for the Republican Party. And the same goes for misogyny and anti-LGBTQ and anti-Semitism, et cetera, et cetera. Where if you're a Democrat, then automatically your platform is supporting marginalized groups of people, because that is the foundation of the Democratic Party. And maybe there are some, racism is kind of a spectrum. It's not just if you're racist or not racist. And I'm sure, I don't know, I don't know what your background is, Eru. Obviously, I am a white straight man who is Jewish, so I don't really have, I don't really have, what's the word I'm looking for? I am not able to make blanket statements about the state of racism in America as a person who is not a direct target of it. But I do think that it is productive to recognize that it's not just that people are racist or not racist. There's like really subtle levels to it, where people can be unconsciously racist, people can be, or people can be like proudly, loudly racist, like people like Nick Fuentes or David Duke. And yeah, I understand that it is pretty rich asking marginalized groups of people for patience and forgiveness for people who have made those kinds of mistakes in the past. Like, we've already asked marginalized communities to be patient and to give grace and allow people time to learn and adjust for so long. I'm sure it feels like fucking I gotta wait longer. I gotta give you more grace. I gotta give you more. I gotta accept more of your apologies. Like, I completely understand that. So yeah, it's not up to me to say that you have to, find his apologies or explanations reasonable. But I personally do, and I think that it's more productive to allow people to have had their flaws in the past. So yeah, I hope that explanation makes sense. Okay. Jack says, Jared, are you seeing this? Just liked this live with my tip. Don't know what it is. What are your thoughts? Jack says, what are your thoughts in 2016 when Trump first started talking about his wall? You know, by the time 2016 came around, a lot of us who had been paying attention to politics for a while knew that Trump was a liar and a con man and a piece of shit. And so when he started talking about the wall, you know, even people who were not experts in that were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's bullshit. That's stupid," you know. Um yeah, and you know, it is appealing to a racist, you know, contingency of the Republican Party that is, you know, very passionate about voting for him. You know, Zard says, "Do you support a secure border, though?" Yeah, sure, why not? Airway Hebron says, "Grow on your own time, not when my rights are on the line." But I understand your perspective. So, Air Abraham, do you think that if Graham Plattner were to win that Senate seat over who has it now? It's not Murkowski. It's Collins, over Collins. Do you think that Graham Plattner's vote in the Senate would be more beneficial to marginalized groups than Susan Collins's vote would be? Because I believe that Graham Plattner's vote would be better for marginalized communities than Collins's would. Fletch Lives Again says, thoughts on Trump getting $230 million from his Department of Justice? The Donald Trump suing his own Justice Department for $230 million and then getting to decide what the settlement that he gives himself is, because he is pulling the strings at the Department of Justice right now, is the most blatant and obvious theft of taxpayer dollars that I think has ever happened in American history. It would be less obvious if he just drove a fucking pickup truck onto the White House lawn and started putting things in the truck and driving it to his house. It would be less subtle for him to hold like a literal fucking garage sale on the White House lawn and be auctioning things off like Abraham Lincoln's relics and the Resolute desk and shit like that, and then putting that money in his pocket. It is so obviously corrupt, grifting fucking theft, you know? Like, what the fuck, man? Like, unbelievable. Okay, Jack says, is Chancellor Palpatine truly corrupt, or is this fake news propped up by religious wizards? Is a very funny way to describe Jedis. Okay, let's get back over to Twitch. Your neighborly sheet poster says, I don't believe Republicans are made up of neo-Nazis, but there is a definite infiltration of genuine neo-Nazis and white supremacists in there. It nudges the ship in wild directions. Racism is motivated by various things. Understanding reasons can often help in combating it for sure. I agree with all that. Your neighborly sheet poster. JP12 says, I Googled and recall it now. 17th Amendment was because of corruption. Governors usually appointed a chum, and direct vote was supposed to end corruption. Ooh, interesting. I didn't know that. Average Joe PG says, there's a difference between recent unapologetic words and actions versus past mistakes with efforts made for self-improvement. I completely agree with that, Average Joe. Okay. RK says, he may use it to add money to the ballroom fund, potentially. Kimberlina says, did you see the list of donors to the ballroom? No, I did not. I'm sure it's the same old, what do you call it? I'm sure it's the same old pieces of shit, right-wing billionaire pieces of shit. Kimberlina says, do you think there will be riots if SNAP benefits aren't released on November 1st? I mean, I don't know about riots. There'll probably be more theft. Like, I'm imagining poor people deciding that it's better to risk going to jail than starving to death in their houses. I applaud Governor Newsom for mobilizing the National Guard to lend extra hands to food banks in California so that Americans living in California don't die of starvation. And I hope that other red states are doing the same, that other states are doing the same, including red states, you know? Alrighty. Tucker B says, Trump 2028? God, I hope not. He's going to try, Tucker, but I don't think that any of us should be, what do you call it? Either of us should be excited about the possibility of that happening. Jake says, do you support the Israeli government not trapcasting and just doing a personal survey? No, I do not. The Netanyahu coalition government is extremely right-wing. They are guilty of war crimes. They are guilty of genocide. what they're doing is barbaric and unconscionable. Netanyahu is killing people so that he can stay in power and stay out of jail, and it's disgusting. T Candy says November, donate to your local community food banks. It would help out a lot. Completely agree with that. Triska said this country is so sad right now. Completely agree with that. Okay. Kimberlina says, how'd you know? Lucky guess, I guess. Let's see here. Andrea Todd says, MAGA haven't been outraged by this information. They're probably not getting it. There's a massive information bubble for people who are right-wing voters, Okay, Jordan Love Season says, so I guess we can't play poker now? Free Chauncey. I don't know what that means. Donnie David Johnny Locke says, keep up the great work, Donald Trump. I hope that's sarcastic. Okay. Errol Abraham says, government giving you food from food banks, but they think Dems are communists. It's giving Fidel. Yeah, like, what are we gonna do, man? I cannot keep on fighting the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, because they delight in it. Like, they literally do it to make us mad. So, like, they're hypocrites. We're just gonna have to deal with that. Let's see here. All right, we're actually all cut up on questions right now. So. Okay. All right. That is a block over there. Okie dokie. 12 birds in a trench coat says, making Blues Clues noises, LOL. Oh, is that what happens on Blues Clues? I haven't watched. Fletch Lives Again says, will increase in medical insurance outrage the right enough to change their minds? Potentially, but, I don't think that we should underestimate the power of propaganda to shift the vitriol of right-wing voters to people that are not responsible for their problems. So where we can draw a direct line of causation from right-wing voters suffering from cost of living increases to actions of the Trump administration, right-wing media is going to be telling them that it is because of Democrats and immigrants and trans kids and black people and poor people. And, whether who believes that and who doesn't believe that is, I can't wait to find out. This is a very exciting season of America. But yeah, I think that that's just part of the work that we all have to do, is making sure that people are not stuck in those information bubbles by talking to them in real life and, correcting any misinformation that they are currently believing. All right, let's see here. We got a special guest on the live stream right now. Let's see here. I forget who I just accepted. Who is this? Hello.
Yo, what's good?
Nothing much, man. What's going on? You got a question for me?
Oh boy, do I.
All right, what's up?
What's your opinion on the Franklin scandal?
Well, what's the Franklin scandal?
Oh boy. It's a pretty big one. I feel like people don't know about it for a reason. Because of how censored, just media blackout type stuff. But it was Republicans in the 1980s. They got busted pretty bad for some Epstein level stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that, man. My expertise is more in contemporary politics, and my knowledge gets less and less the further back in history that we go. Is that the only thing that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I felt like it is. I don't want to go full schizo mode on you or anything.
No, that's okay, man. I'll give it a Google,
Oh, no, definitely not Google. You won't get anything on Google. You might want to go to your library for that one.
All right. Well, I'll give it a check out, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, but anyone who's listening should definitely look into that. It's pretty horrible.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, what a fun adventure inviting people up into this here. Into the live stream. JP says, bigger scandal than $230 million self-payouts. I don't know what you're referring to, but I can't imagine just a more blatant form of corruption than that. Alrighty, let's see here. 12 Birds in Trenchcoat says there are podcasts that tell the Franklin scandal story. Yeah, I'll look into it, but I don't know anything about it. Keith says, how about history on the fellow with the island, starting with facts stating from the Obama administration? Keith, I'm not really sure what you're getting at there, but it seems kind of antithetical to everything that I know about the fellow with the islands. 12 Birds in Trench goes, that's if he's talking about the same one that I am. Yeah, I've never heard about this. Mia's LV Adventure says, what's next? Are we going to talk about Nixon and the Watergate files? Listen, this fella did not necessarily know that we talk mainly about contemporary politics, so, let's not throw any hate there. Keith says, why do they protest kings but don't care that they never had a choice on Kamala? Keith, are you still here? Send me a message to let me know that you're still here, because I would love to respond to that. RK says, what is the deal with potential Supreme Court case and gun owners who use gardening tools? I'm not up on that one. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be like one of those conflicts of interest within the Republican Party where the NRA wants to have unlimited access to firearms so that they can sell more guns, but also the Trump administration wants to crack down on the rights of people that they view as their enemies and people that live in blue states where gardening is more legal. They kind of fall under that category. So yeah, I need to get like a little bit of an update on that. Excuse me. Okay, where are you, Keith? Keith, are you still here, Keith? Let me know. East Meets Westy Bestie says, what could make you think inviting an unknown would be successful? Comments had kind of slowed down, so I was like, all right, yeah, we gotta, we got another 13 minutes on the live at least, so, maybe there'll be something good here. My wife tells me that I should have people on sometimes, that maybe it'll help me in Al Gore's rhythm. Let's see here. So yeah, I don't mind experimenting time and time again. Not Drake says, who do you think will win the New York City mayoral race? I mean, all the polling is suggesting that Mamdani's going to run away with it. He has the passion. He has the policies. People seem to like him. For anybody that's currently living in New York, I would caution you to take everything that you read about Mamdani with a massive grain of salt, because the billionaire class is coming after him hard, and they are not going to stop if he wins after he wins. They are going to use all of their money, power, and influence to not only torpedo his campaign, but also fund think pieces that say, oh, the failed promise of Mamdani. Can democratic socialists ever actually accomplish anything? Like, fucking mark my words. This is one of those political predictions that I feel totally confident making, is that I feel like I could write the headlines that are going to come out about Mamdani right now. And it's going to be shit like that, Arrow Abraham says, you should have people on, but gotta drop weirdos fast. Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job of nixing that fella. Sixer says, yeah, Jared, bring more people up. I think you would boost the numbers. Yeah, potentially. Mike Green says, have you heard any good Republican policy lately, or is it all just garbage? I haven't heard anything. I have not heard a single thing. The Republican platform is cutting taxes for the rich, cutting regulations on their businesses, cutting government services that people actually need, ruining our reputation in the global economy, leaving global, aid to other nations to start building their reputations and accessing resources. It's like, yeah, we are increasing global instability thanks to Republican rule. We are increasing income inequality. We are making people more desperate, ruining people's lives. There are people who are dead today, like lots and lots of people who are dead today because of what Trump has done in just 8 months. It's fucking disgusting. Alrighty. Not Drake says Curtis will win. Yeah, sure thing, man. With that fucking red beret is, I don't think so. Carmine says, is MAGA really gonna let Bill Clinton get away? Release the files. That's very funny, Carmine. C Heaven says, how will he pay for his promises? Who? Mamdani? By taxing the rich. C Heaven. Let's see here. Carbine says, aren't there memes where they line up the Trump family to take over the presidency? Did they forget? Oh, no, those memes definitely exist. Yeah, I guess my friend Keith decided to dip. He just wanted to put some misinformation in the chat and then dip. Well, isn't that strange? Okay, Average Joe says, both sidesism is a propaganda tool used to create a false equivalency. Example, a person killing a home intruder in self-defense and Jeffrey Dahmer are both killers. That is completely accurate, Average Joe, and you know that this is how I feel. That the both sides narrative does nothing but assist the Republican Party. It convinces people to not vote for Democrats or to vote for Republicans, you know? Let's see here. East meets Westy Bessie says, I checked his profile and he was a bot. Yeah, that tracks. Jack says, opinions on the Virginia governor election. I'm going to vote today. Do you know who you're going to vote for, Jack? Obviously, I would encourage you to vote for the Democrats, but I haven't seen any polling, so I don't really know where it's at the moment. Okay. I don't know yet. That's why I'm asking you. Yeah, I haven't seen any information about it. 12 Birds in a Trench Coat says, oddly enough, even Clinton has always advocated for releasing the files. I mean, yeah, you know, maybe he's talking out of his ass. Maybe he just knows that he's not in there anymore because when he was in charge, he made the right connections to get his name taken out of there. I don't know. Eru Abraham says, someone said they're voting for Silwa because he knows all the streets in New York. I mean, that's, you got First Avenue, you got Second Avenue, you got Third Avenue. It's hard, man. I lived there for 20 years, and sometimes I forget all the avenues, you know? Like Second Avenue, it's easy to forget that one. There's just so many. And then there's First Street, Second Street, Third Street, Fourth Street, you know? It's tough, man. Not Drake says, and he will destroy New York, vote Silva. Are you being sarcastic, Not Drake? Because I thought you were originally. Salvatore says, don't care who is on the ticket, vote anything blue. It can't get any worse than this. I agree with that, Salvatore, but I think that you can dig into your candidates for the primary. I think you can vote for who you want in the primary. But when it gets to the general election, you got to vote for better over worse, like every single time. C. Heaven says, how will Mamdani pay for his promises? Like how you managed to avoid this topic. No, I literally answered it, C. Heaven. He's going to tax the rich, and then he's going to use the money from those rich people taxes to pay for that. Not Drake says, no, I am not. The 1% will go to Florida, and Mamdani will tax the middle class. No, Mamdani is going to tax the wealthy. Not Drake. I don't think that you're here to actually engage. I think you're just here to push that agenda. But yeah, I mean, Silva's going to lose by a lot, so I'm not really worried about you being here. 12 Birds in a Trench says, always research Democratic candidates or you'll get another Fetterman. I mean, Fetterman won the primary, you know, and he seemed cool at the time, but then he had a stroke and doesn't seem like he's the same fellow that he was before. But who knows? Who knows? Not Drake, he said he won't tax the wealthy. They will go to Florida and he will tax the middle class. No, he's not gonna. Mamdani is not planning on increasing taxes on just the richest people in New York. If all the wealthy people leave and now the rich people in New York are the middle class, he's not going to then shift that to them. Not Drake. I don't want to fight with you, man. Like, you're just saying things that are inaccurate. So I don't know what you want to do here, my guy. But if you pay attention to what Mamdani is saying, you will recognize that is not his plan. I also don't believe that rich people are going to leave New York. You know, like there's no place that's like New York. It's the greatest city in the world. And those rich people are not going to give up their fucking dinners at Cipriani and fucking One Madison Park or whatever the hot restaurants are right now, just because they have to pay an extra 1 or 2% in taxes. You know, what they're gonna do is they're gonna stay and they're gonna try to torpedo his campaign. You know, they're gonna be in the fucking Hamptons. They're gonna be fucking Central Park West. Like, fucking leave, man. Like, leave all those luxury apartments. Maybe you will bring the rent down a little bit. You know, but yeah, it's rich people propaganda is what you're spreading right now, Not Drake. I hope you're getting paid for this. You know, Carmine says rich people don't give up their money if you think they'll give up their way of income. I think I agree with that. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, Average Joe says, if you lived in New York and the general election was ranked choice, would you still rank Silva over Cuomo. No, I wouldn't rank either of them at all. I would just vote Mamdani, and that is it. 12 Birds in a Trench Coat says the rich have always threatened to leave, but they never do unless temporary to psych us out. That is accurate. Error Abraham says they're going to spend money they could have paid in taxes to fight him. Ironic. Yeah, he just did that on fucking Andrew Schultz's podcast where he was like, they're spending so much more money trying to tank my campaign than they would have spent in taxes. You know, rich people, man. What do they fuck? What is it good for? You know, Shork says, is capital flight even recognized as a possibility to increased taxes? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. As a possibility, it's capital even recognized as a possibility to increase taxes. I mean, I suppose. I mean, rich people keep on yelling and screaming about it, so of course it's recognized. It's front of mind, you know. Mike Green says, do you think religion is ruining the Republican Party or the Republican Party is ruining religion? I would say it's probably the Republican Party is ruining religion. I mean, there has been for a long time this wing of Christianity that believes in this sort of like rich ascendancy doctrine, meaning that like if you are rich, it is evidence that God loves you because he's showering you with wealth. So obviously you are a good person in his eyes. And, you know, those people that spread that bullshit are extremely wealthy and powerful. And so people kind of, I don't know, I guess they fucking buy it, I guess. I don't know why they buy it, but yeah. Ecuadorian, we're the same time every day, man. Don't know how you missed us. Let's see here. Okay. JP, that's very funny. Okay. Kitschy Noodle says, how do we unite the Dems? Example, some that believe Kamala is amazing, others that believe the opposite. So I think Kitschy Noodle, the big answer to this is talking to people in real life, because, you know, people like you and me that are trying to, you know, calm intra-party tensions so that we're not fighting amongst ourselves while the Republican Party is just like stealing billions and billions of dollars from the American people. I don't think that our voices are going to get amplified enough on the internet to make that big of a difference. I think that you and I and people like us need to make sure that we are talking to people in real life and spreading that message that it is okay to have disagreements with different wings of the party. That is the entire point of the Democratic Party. We are a big tent. We are a rainbow coalition. There is going to be disagreements. There are going to be compromises. But we are still the better political party by a mile. And so we need to form a coalition with ourselves to fight against the Republican Party, who are doing everything they can to divide us and convince us that if it's not our specific candidate that won the primary, then the best thing you can do is not vote at all. Jack Barlow says, stop blaming the left for getting mad at Democrats for being Israeli puppets, LOL. Blame Kamala. You know, Jack, that's not a very productive comment, so maybe you want to take things down a notch, or I'm going to boot you. Cflon says, I agree the current government is stealing money, but Dems would and have done the same. No, Cflon, no. You know I love you, Cflon. You're a regular, but that is blatantly inaccurate. That is wildly inaccurate. Like, the things that the Trump administration is currently doing, the things that the Republican Party, the bills that the Republican Party are passing, the things that they are letting Trump get away with are unprecedented. Unprecedented is too mild a word for what is currently going on in our government in regards to corruption, grifting, and stealing from the American people. It's a fucking fire sale. It is unbelievable. It's fucking psychotic, man. It is. If you wrote it in a movie, no one would believe it. It is. There's no words. There's no words. It is galactic. It is fucking Leviathan, what is going on here. And there is nothing in the history of America, Republican, Democrat, Whig Party, no nothings, that is even close to matching it. Cflon. Alrighty. Jack Barlow says, Democrats would have won if they had just chose someone like Mamdani for the primary. Jack Barlow, loves AIPAC money. Not sure how I'm wrong, but sure. Okay, Jack Barlow. It seems like you have taken my note and turn the temperature down a little bit. So let's engage a little bit, Jack Barlow. Would you like to come on the live stream, Jack? Or are you in a place where you cannot be on the live stream? Mazurk says, real question, and then did not put anything after their colon. Okay. This guy's rear, kick you in the air for speech. Bryson says Democratic shutdown. No, it's not. It's Republican shutdown. They're in the control of the government right now. Okay. Yeah, Jack, waiting for you to tell me if you're down with getting into it today, or do you just want to put bullshit in my chat? Eric Abraham says, who thinks Kamala was amazing? People supported her because she was our nominee, but amazing, I don't know them. Some people really liked Kamala Harris. You know, she definitely had fans. There were definitely people that liked her, but I don't know if there's a massive contingency in the Democratic Party that was, you know, in love with Kamala Harris. Right. East Meets Westy says, we did think she had potential. I thought she had potential. Absolutely. Yeah, Jack, waiting on you, man. Isn't it so strange? Isn't it so strange that these people who are pushing propaganda to try to take pot shots at the Democratic Party as though they are as bad as the Republican Party, as soon as you engage with them, they dip. You know, I invited the dude on the live stream. Cflon says, you know, I'm becoming disenfranchised with the conservative side of myself, but hard to trust. I get that, Cflon, 100%. But, you know, please tell me that you are at least aware that just Trump having a crypto coin by itself is the most wildly corrupt thing that a president has done in American history. Please tell me that you recognize that accepting a $400 million jet from Qatar and then spending $1 billion of American taxpayer money to retrofit the jet is not like the most corrupt and wasteful thing that a president has done in American history. Like, can we at least agree on that, my guy? Jack Barlow, you're back. Huzzah. Nobody is saying they are nowhere near as bad, just spineless, all for PR. Bombs with BLM on them, and then the peace sign. So I guess you're not here in good faith to engage in good faith. I'm not here to fight, Jack. If you're here to fight, just fucking leave, you know? But if you want to engage in good faith, then I'm down for engaging in good faith. Let's see here. Joni Calder says, why doesn't the government stop Trump from destroying the White House? Because they're scared of him. Because the Republican Party is in control of the government, and they are either scared of him or they're on board with his fascist bullshit. Mazurk says, why is there no correspondence or communications with 3i Atlas? I don't know what that is. Cflon says, I'm fully with you. I'm pardoning a crypto scammer. There you go, my guy. Moshe Dino says, the 400 million Qatar jet is nothing compared to billions they spend on brainwashing U.S. youth on university. I mean, you know, oh, Jack requested. Hello there. Okay, so yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, Moshe, but you know, this is not a pissing contest for what is the worst Trump scandal of all time. Jack, what's going on, buddy?
My name is Pink, and I'm really glad to meet you.
All right, see you later. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? I thought that guy might be completely full of shit. Unbelievable, man. You know, this is what happens when you are raised Catholic, is that you actually believe in giving people a chance and forgiveness and outreach, and then people just spit in your face, you know? But Jesus taught me to turn the other cheek. So, but I don't have to keep you on my live. Jack, I do not have to have you on my live. Mazurk says, bro, come on, this is the problem. Ugh. What is the problem? Mazurk. Where are you? 3i Atlas. Yeah, I don't know what that is, man. Here, Abraham says, Jack, don't fail us. You have put your faith in a false god, Abraham. David says, the No Kings protest made no sense. It made a lot of sense, David. Why don't you think it made any sense? Carmine says, when's the last time we had a VP pushing this much propaganda? I couldn't tell you. Cflon says, just had a minute to stop by. Good day to you, buddy. Good day to you too, Cflon. Bren says, the power of Christ compels you. Let's see here. JP says, hey, I was raised Catholic too, and I object to, okay, it's true. Let's see here. Bots can't join by voice yet. That's very funny. Average Joe says, We keep hearing, aren't you worried about the wealthy business owners leaving NYC? Why don't they ask, aren't you worried about everyone else moving out? Excellent point, Average Joe PG. Excellent point. David says, if we had a king, he wouldn't have let them protest. So, David, there are a couple of things that are wrong with that narrative. Number one, we are not saying that Trump is actively a king. We are saying that Trump is acting like a king and trying to become a king by removing things like the balance of power and oversight from the government, by consolidating power the way that a fascist dictator might. Number two is, even in more authoritarian countries like Russia, there are still protests, and sometimes those protests are met with force, and sometimes those protests are ignored. There were 7 million people protesting in all 50 states. And I don't believe that Trump had the power to stop that from happening at the moment, So let me know if you heard any of that, David, or if your brain is not even open to hearing any information that challenges your priors. Thank you, Average Joe. Good to see you again. Let's see here. Kendra Cantrell says, I went to mine in Columbus and it was huge. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I love Columbus. I went to college near Columbus. Marley Poet says, is Zoran a good roadmap for the Democratic Party? So it's an interesting question, Marley. The issue is that the country is big and extremely diverse, and people's political opinions cannot be whittled down to, Democrat or Republican or even centrist Democrat or progressive Democrat. Like there are many, many subtle layers involved there. And so where I believe that every American, left, right, or center, could get on board with the message and authenticity of a candidate like Zohran Mamdani, there are other parts of the country that just him describing himself as a democratic socialist are enough to be like, I am never voting for a Democrat if they're going to support a candidate like that. And so there are going to be pollsters out there who will tell you that based on the crosstabs in, displacing this swing state or this swing district, that running a Mamdani-like candidate would be political suicide. And I don't think that anybody can tell you with 100% certainty which of us are right in this argument. And so I like to approach this with the humility of recognizing that I might be wrong, because I do not have the experience of living in every area of the country. But I personally believe that that's the move. Like the way that we see enthusiasm for candidates like AOC and Bernie Sanders and Mamdani and Platner, sorry, Aaron Abraham, but people were very excited about him before all the Oppo research came out. I think that is infectious, and stories about people like Obama talking to, swing state or red state voters and them saying things like, I don't agree with you, but you seem like a good guy, so you got my vote. Like, I don't know. It just kind of tracks for me that is the move for the Democratic Party. I think we should all have the humility to recognize that we don't know the future of politics and that weird shit happens all the time. And just because you find that candidate to be, the one doing all the right moves doesn't mean that everybody else in America feels the same way. All right. David says, I'm hearing you, but why was it funded by the Communist Party of the U.S.? You're making good points, though. Why was what funded by the Communist Party of the U.S., David? Error Abraham says, we have to take note that AOC won her district by almost 90%. Trump won the same said district. Did he? That can't be right. Trump couldn't have won AOC's district. And if he did, it definitely wasn't by 90%, Error Abraham. I'm not saying you're making stuff up. I'm just saying I haven't seen that stat. That blows my mind. Mike Green says, how much litigation do you think we'll have to go through after this mess? Oh, goodness Lord, lots. Kendra Cantrell says, why is no one talking about the 3 ex-murder arsonists that was serving 30 years and Trump released him? Because there's just so much shit that is equally bad that we're still talking about, Kendra. And I completely fucking agree that we need attention on that. Is this one of the January 6th guys that he commuted the sentence of, or was it somebody else? David says, in their sponsors list, it listed as CPUSA. Whose sponsors list, David? Again, I'm not really sure what you're referring to. Justin of Terrytown says, if Vermin Supreme became president, he will defeat ISIS with time travel. It's very funny. 312MQ says, yeah, AOC talks about it. Yeah, I mean, that's fucking wild, man. And it just goes to show you the diversity and eccentricity of America's political opinions. So while I look at a Bernie Sanders and I'm like, that guy could win all fucking 50 states, you know, there are people out there who are like, never in a fucking million years, you know. Mayo says, no, Kings didn't do shit. I disagree with you, Mayo. I think all protests are very valuable. It's not everything. We have to do other work as well, but all protests are valuable. Kendra says, the man is Dahoud Hanid Ortiz, a former U.S. Marine and dual American Venezuelan citizen. He was convicted in Venezuela in 2023 for Oh, that guy. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, why the fuck was that guy? Why? Why the fuck? You know? But first, it's supposed to be a threat. If you don't listen to our demands, we'll do this. Read the above is what Mail says. That's not... I would disagree that is what protests are for. I think that protests have a lot of value in coalition building, in alleviating some of the psychological pressure of living in the country right now, of recognizing that you are not alone, that you are not crazy, that there is a massive coalition out there. And, as somebody who has lived in both red states and blue states, I think that it is really important to communicate that, the largest protest in America, single day of protest in American history was against this one specific president, and is making me, maybe that helps break through to some people whose votes we need. I agree with you that we also have to do other things like striking and boycotting and, forming mutual aid groups and talking to people in real life and doing our volunteer shifts and working with groups like Indivisible and Vote Save America and stuff like that. But, the protests have their uses and their values. Okay. Marley Poet says, have you heard of liberation theology? I have not. East Meets Westy Bestie says, that's a manipulation that's being examined by Election Alliance. But I'm not sure what that's in reference to. David says, at the bottom of the homepage, it shows their sponsors. Again, what are you talking about? You keep on talking about them and they, but who? But who, my guy? Who? Let's see here. Jago Vargas says, why is the Democratic establishment so concerned about Mamdani? So for a couple of reasons. And I break this down into a couple of different baskets because I don't think that everybody in the Democratic Party who is pushing against candidates like Mamdani or specifically Mamdani have the same motivations. I think some of them are doing this with good intentions, and some of them are doing this with shitty intentions. So let's just start with the shitty intentions. Like, there are probably people in the Democratic Party who don't like Mamdani because he is young, because he's progressive, because he's a Muslim, because he's a brown person, and they believe that that is not what the party stands for, or maybe it threatens their power as centrist old white people. But I think that other people recognize that supporting a candidate like Mamdani could maybe turn off some voters because they're scared of the word socialist in his political party ideology. Maybe they believe that down ballot Democrats in purple districts or red districts are going to suffer if the Democratic Party supports a candidate like Mamdani. Potentially, it will draw the ire of AIPAC, which I don't think that AIPAC is a good organization that we should support, but they're extremely powerful, and they can lose your primary and your general election if they put you in their crosshairs. I would love for the American people to prove that AIPAC dollars do not lose politicians their primaries in the general elections, but it hasn't happened yet. Okay, Eastman Society says AOC versus the outlandish Trump results. That's what it's referencing. Ooh, okay. That's what you were talking about. That's a manipulation that's being examined by Election Alliance. I mean, I guess if they're going to do that, then why not just lose AOC her election also, But again, I think the Election Alliance stuff is interesting. I just don't find it definitive, I find the Rockland County case more definitive, we have to find out. We have to wait and see how that case turns out. JP says AOC plus Trump is a weird crossover that is real, but it was 30%, not a win. Harris got about 65%. Oh, interesting. I think, probably what AOC is talking about is that he increased his vote share in her district as opposed to losing support in that district. Maybe it was something like that. Okay. E. Giles says, is everything connected to politics? I guess. I suppose an argument could be made. Kendra Cantrell says, everyone go take the pledge for General Strike. General Strike USA, please. So Kendra, which of the various websites that are calling for a general strike do you prefer? I saw one that did not have a sign-up sheet. I saw another one that seemed a little sus because the organizers were not putting their names on it, and I don't know, I kind of need to know that this is not some sort of like bot that is just trying to steal people's personal information. So let me know if you've done that digging. Let me know if you have better information than me. David says, bro, how are you going to ask me for the source? I gave it to you and you didn't look. First of all, I do not click on links from strangers. Second of all, I did not see your source. And third of all, I didn't ask you for the source, David. I asked you who got funded by the Communist Party. You told me they. And I was asking you, who are you talking about, man? What is going on here? And you have not answered that question. Carmine says, stranger danger? Yeah, 100%. Abraham says, it's not a weird crossover. Many Bernie supporters voted for Trump. The common denominator was anti-establishment. Yes. Change, different, tearing things down, 100%. That is the common connection there. David says, I'm not sure it's on an official website. That's why I'm asking you. What official website? David, you're fucking with me. That is the only thing that I can come up with, all right? Because I've asked you 10 times, and you keep on obfuscating. Okay. Past tense says, what do you think about the murder of the young boy in the UK the other day? I didn't hear anything about a murder of a young boy in the UK, but obviously every murder is a tragedy and should not happen. John Abbott says, why not just lose AOC her election too? Because AOC is an easy target for their scaremongering, so her being in office is a net benefit for the GOP. Oh yeah, that's interesting, I suppose. But I mean, I guess they could have just won more. Like there are a bunch of races that they could have also stolen. Let's see here. Past tense says, what do you think about Trump? He is a massive piece of shit. He is a liar. He's a con artist. He is hurting millions and millions of people. People are dead because of him, senselessly. He is trying to start a war with Venezuela. He is actively accepting bribes from anybody in the world through his cryptocurrency. He is the most wildly corrupt piece of shit person that has ever held that office. I cannot say enough negative things about Donald Trump and the things that he has done. Fogger War Production says, did you hear about the whole Argentina beef imports thing? Yeah, just another fucking slap in the face to working class Americans because Donald Trump wants to prop up his buddy over in Argentina, his fucking right-wing autocrat in Argentina with the libertarian government. We're buying a fucking cratering Argentinian peso because he wants to help out his buddy, because he doesn't want his billionaire buddies who are invested in Argentina to lose money. It's fucking disgusting, man. And I desperately hope that working class Americans recognize how much Trump is screwing them over for his billionaire buddies. Right. Israel Franco says, with all gerrymandering going on, what is the probability the Republicans would vote for a Democrat? I don't know, Israel Franco. It's a moving target because polling kind of hasn't matched the new districts yet, and also there's some people will potentially, some of these districts are maybe gerrymandered a little too hard and potentially lose Republicans because of how thin their margins are in all these various districts. So yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that plus all the shitty things that Trump is doing, yeah, that could equal Republicans voting for Democrats. Oh, excuse me. JP Reels says, I'm saying a thing is true and asking you if it's true. While you're asking for proof, you should give me the proof. Very funny, JP. All right. Past tense says, what do you think about the political assassination of Charlie Kirk? I condemn in the strongest possible language all political violence. All violence in general. I don't think people should be doing violence. I am a pacifist. I don't think people should be doing property destruction. I think that it is wrong to lionize and rewrite the history of Charlie Kirk. Like, he was a bad guy. He was a very bad person. He was bad for our politics. He was lying to people. He was a con artist and an extremist. But that does not mean that you get to just murder him, you know? And I think it is illuminating that people very high up in the Republican Party ethos, elected politicians, content creators like Ben Shapiro, all of them have been doing nothing but stoking the flames of this divisiveness and political violence. And everybody on the left has been doing the opposite. Okay, Mael says, ask for emancipation by saying please, thank you with a smile then. Working class interests aren't served by Dems, though they're all bought by the ruling class. Mael, that's just inaccurate. I can tell you a lot of things that the Democratic Party has accomplished over the last 40 years that were specifically for the working class and against the wealthy elite. I can point to you examples of Democrats trying to do even more and were only stopped by, individual Democrats in the party or being filibustered by the Republican Party. It is inaccurate to say that both parties are equally corrupt, equally bought by the billionaire class. The Democratic Party is better by a fucking mile, like it's not even close. And if you'd like to really get into the specifics of that, I happily will. Mael, like you are, you seem like you have been here in good faith the entire day today. So, I don't think that you're here just to talk shit or anything. So yeah, let's get into it if you like. Maybe we put a pin in it because I'm almost at 90 minutes and I usually only do an hour, so I gotta dip out of here. Past tense says, if you scale yourself, do you consider yourself left wing, middle, or right wing? Left wing, definitely. I call myself a progressive Democrat. All right, everybody, I'm gonna start wrapping things up. Get in your final questions. If there are any questions that I don't have time to answer or that I was not able to answer or that you think of later, hit me up. Do not be shy. I encourage you guys to DM me. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you guys to not only become better informed about politics, but also to get you involved in activist activity and show you volunteer opportunities and great organizations to be involved with. So if I can be that resource for you, I want you to use me. I want you to use me and abuse me. I want you to use me until I'm all used up. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling. I have Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. Link is in my bio. I have a store that you can buy things from my website. Same link in the bio. And you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and become super subscribers and stuff like that. So yes, if that is something that you would like to do, then I encourage you to do that. Yes, Discord is a great resource because that's where I get to put all of my recommendations for activist activities and also books and podcasts and stuff like that. And you can also get in touch there as well. And lastly, I would just encourage everybody to do the work because I think that the only way that we get out of this is if people like you and me get out there and do the fucking work. I don't think that there's any organization that is powerful enough to do this by themselves. That the good people need our help. The good people need us to work with them. And so please do that work. The more work that you and I do, the less work that we all have to do individually. So let's all fucking get out there and put a stop to this shit. User69 says, can you remove the words millions and billions from Trump's vocabulary, please? I'll do my best. Mayo says, they get minor social progress now and then, but they will never get rid of class exploitation that is inherent to capitalism. So I'm not going to try to make an argument, Mael, to support capitalism. I'm sure an argument exists that I would agree with, but I'm not prepared to make it. What I will say is that the people who are alive today because of the Affordable Care Act are not going to say that the Democrats only ever do minor social progress. Like, there are people alive today because people voted for Democrats and Barack Obama. There are people who were able to afford to live because of the Affordable Care Act in a way that they were not able to before. The Rail Workers Union got the sick days that they wanted to strike for because of the Biden administration. Seniors were paying less for their medication. People were paying less for their insulin and for their asthma inhalers. Like, those are not small things. And yes, there is still a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party that is way too corporate and billionaire and lobbyist friendly. I 100% guarantee you that. But if you're looking for the political party that has the people in it that are going to go hard in the paint for the working class against the elite, they're in the Democratic Party. And they need your support. And they need the support of the neoliberals that are still in the party. You know, if a Chuck Schumer wins his primary, him being in the Senate is still better than a Republican being in that Senate. Chuck Schumer being in the Senate empowers people like Bernie Sanders. And Nancy Pelosi being in the House empowers people like AOC. How do you feel about all that stuff, Mayo? How do you feel about that? Okay. User a bunch of numbers says, when Trump expires, can we the people go after his evil spawns? I mean, we can all try to, elect people that will hold them accountable for their crimes. Absolutely, User 68. Mael says, do you not think it's an urgent need to get out of the two-party system? So a couple of things about that, Mael. Number one, I don't like the fact that we only have two ascendant political parties. But there is not the infrastructure to just vote for another political party to open up that spectrum. The only way that we get out of the two-party system is through ranked choice voting, and the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. And so the only way out is through. If we support the Democratic Party and we, primary out of the government the Democrats that are not going to vote for the changes that we want, like ranked choice voting, that's how we get our political process opened to more political parties and ending the ascendancy of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But also, I think that people overhype the problems of the two-party system. Like, I think it's bad. I think that it is responsible for some, pushing people to extreme wings and shutting out specific voices within the party, but it doesn't do every bad thing that people ascribe to it, let's see here. Mayel, I appreciate you as well. All right, I gotta get out of here, guys. I went for way too long today. I hope it's the Rocketeer, don't you dare. So everybody have a good Thursday. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.